All right, so we're live. It's COMP1073, and it's in the winter 2017 semester at Georgian College, and we are week one, part one of our broadcast. Notice I didn't put broadcast in here, right? Can I correct the video later on? Absolutely. It's not a big deal. So we're broadcasting live here at Georgian, and we're talking about client-side scripting. I want to start off with our syllabus a little bit. We meet on Wednesdays in this room from 12 to 3, right? I'm going to stay in this room after this, but I have another class directly after this one. Really, we're talking about client-side technologies. So that means things like HTML5 and CSS3. But when we talk scripting, we talk JavaScript. That's the main language of the web right now. And it's very powerful. You can do everything with JavaScript, from simple special effects to replacing some styling that you can get with CSS3, all the way to making full-blown games. And I've created games with JavaScript, just JavaScript, right? And there is a bit of a learning curve when it comes to learning all the details. The old book that we were using before, and I kind of kept it here, was Learning JavaScript. I'm going to pull from this book, but primarily the book that I want to start using, and I'm going to change up the outline a little bit here, is Murak's JavaScript, and it's from 2015. It's a little bit more modern than this one. This is the old one that we used to use before. I'm still going to pull from it. There's a couple of lessons that are really, really good, especially about progressive enhancement, which we're going to talk about today. Okay. So even though it says this is the way to get a hold of me, like I said, we're going to create a Slack group, right? Slack is a very modern application that people are using in business today. I recommend you download and install Slack and you sign up for Slack. So how does it work? I create a group like this, right? So I go in here and I create a new group. So my group domain is going to be called the name of the course. So it's going to be COMP1073-Winter 2017, right? And then click continue. That'll be okay. How about we do that? Create new team. That's what I meant to do, and I'll do the same thing. So here's my email address. My email address I'm using is the one from Georgian. Okay. I don't care about getting messages from Slack right now. They'll usually send me a code, and they may or may not do it right now when I'm recording, just letting you know. So worst case scenario, if they don't, what I will be doing with you guys is setting up Slack later, right? So that we have our Slack channel created. And that's what they normally do. They normally send me a code, and I see some people have already joined me on YouTube. That's fine. When that happens, of course, you get notified when I create a new video. And just checking this for a second. Hopefully they'll send me the Slack notification. If they don't, it's okay. But basically what we do is we get a Slack, I set up the Slack channel, and then what you do is you join in, and hopefully by break, it'll be all ready to set up and everything else. I'll send you guys invites. But typically, if you have a georgiancollege.ca website, email address, right? You can set up and sign up for Slack on your own when I set it up, okay? And what we're going to be using it for, like I said, is as an addition to Blackboard. Blackboard's okay, but communication through Blackboard really sucks, right? So I don't use Blackboard email. Don't send me an email through Blackboard. Send me an email directly to my email address, so tom.siliopoulos@georgiancollege.ca, or through Slack when this gets set up. Okay, so we're going to be using Slack. I'll set that up later on. Okay, let's talk about evaluations, right? Because everyone wants to know how they're going to be evaluated. So we're going to have 4 assignments, only 4, right? Each one is going to be weighted the exact same. Now, they're all differently, challenging, if you will. So why did I do that? Because if I make it the easy ones worth the same as the hard ones, that means if you do really good at the beginning, it can make up for maybe some stuff that's more challenging for you later on. I want to make so the course is not going to be a killer course for you, okay? So each of the assignments, on 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all weighted equally. They're all 15%, right? That sounds like a lot of marks, but you're going to have a couple of weeks to do each of them, okay? I'm not going to ask you to do them like immediately within the next week or something like that. Typically, when I give you an assignment, and what I'm going to try and do this semester is put all of the assignments up next week. So I'll put them all up, I'll list them all with the due dates. I'll remind you when they're due. And then at your leisure, you can knock these off whenever you feel like, right? That's 60% of the course, right, if you do the assignments. The best way to be successful at this course is attend class, do your assignments. I'm going to make practical exams for both the midterm and the final. So you're going to have to build something for midterm final. There's not going to be multiple choice true false. I don't do those things, right? It's a practical exam that you come in, you build something, and the only way to get good at doing that is to actually do the assignments. All the assignments that you're going to be building are all individual assignments. That's the kind of the bad news, right? So you can't share with anybody else. There's no group work. It's just you, right? And this is a good way of you learning how to do JavaScript. The best way to learn JavaScript is to code JavaScript, right? There is no other better way to do it, okay? Watching a video is only one thing, but you need to build something. And so I'm going to give you a few examples of how to do that. And it'll give you some time. There'll also be some exercises in class. We'll ask you to do something at the end of class. If there's a lab or a little quiz, which I may have happen in class, they're all going to be bonus. That means if you actually attend class, then you get a bonus mark. You won't be able to get the bonus if you're not in class, right? So that means if I actually do a lab or any kind of quiz, and it'll be, you know, kind of at random when it happens throughout the semester, right? It'll be usually 1 or 2%. I'm asking you to do some kind of exercise, and it's just going to add on to your mark at the end. So just in case you didn't do so great on assignment 1 or assignment 2, or your midterm kind of fell off the rails, it's okay, because I'm going to give you other opportunities to make it up. Okay, so that's kind of my marking scheme. It's very simple, the way I'm going to evaluate you. Again, both midterm and final exam are with 20, right? They're not that difficult to do. If you do assignment 1 and assignment 2, you'll be able to do midterm, your practical midterm in the middle, no problem, right? And the same thing goes for the final. If you can do assignment 3 and assignment 4, and that's how I kind of break it up, half and half, the final exam will be, again, fairly doable for you. I'm not going to test you on everything that I've already tested you on from the first half in the second half. It'll be building the new stuff that I've kind of covered in the second half. So once you've done, it's kind of compartmentalized. So first half is the first half and the second half is the second half. All right. There is no, you know, kind of stuff where I test you again on the stuff that you did previously. And the midterms aren't worth like 30% or 50% or something crazy. I've seen, you know, final exams worth like 30 and 45%. That's crazy. I think, you know, even 20% to me is really, really high. I'd like to reduce that, and the way I'm going to do that is with, you know, quizzes and labs that kind of bolster your mark. Okay. There's also opportunities always when you do an assignment with me to get bonus marks. So if I give you a criteria, right? I'm not a client, so it's okay if you do extra for me, right? But I don't expect you to spend 50 hours doing extra. It's not going to give you that many marks, right? So, but if you get enough, it's gonna. I don't mind giving people over 100% if they deliver more than 100% of what my expectations are for each of these assignments. So what am I doing? So primarily with the first assignment, you're going to get this mini portfolio site that you're going to have to build. You're going to get it next week, right? And the mini portfolio site means it's all about you. 3 pages. Who are you? It could be something that you've already done before. If you've got materials from other classes that you can use because you've done a portfolio site before, drag it into this course and put it together. So you're going to talk about you. The output is all going to be from JavaScript. It's not going to be through HTML. So all of your actual paragraphs about you, it's all going to be JavaScript. So it's going to be output. We're going to talk how to output to the page using the DOM, the document object model, with JavaScript. So that's the first assignment. And you get a couple weeks to kind of polish that up, make it look nice. There are user interface elements as well. It's kind of balanced to make so it, you know, because this is a web course as well. I want to see what you can do. That's the first assignment. Assignment 2, your contact page, you're going to build, really focus on the contact page for assignment 2. And you're going to get input from the user, right? And it's going to come from the user. You're going to get info from the user. Whatever they input, you're going to be able to track and record somewhere. And we're going to talk about the console a little bit. So really it's output first and then input afterwards, okay? You have your midterm exam where you're going to do input and output, all right? There's no, you know, surprises here. You're going to do some input and output. You're going to get kind of pump things out to the website and get information from the user, right? Both those 2 things are happening in the midterm. Then we're going to handle JSON data with Ajax. We're going to also talk about jQuery around the second half of the semester, right? So that's what's happening around assignment 3. And then we're going to build a JavaScript banner ad with animation by the end, right? So lots of little stuff to happen. So what's the most difficult one? The last one, because it uses every piece of technology we've talked about. JavaScript. We're going to also talk a little bit about TypeScript, right, which is kind of a superset of JavaScript that makes you into superstars. We're learning Bootstrap all at the same time and ancillary technologies. We're going to learn GitHub today, right? That's something that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to sign up for a Git account if you don't have one already. Some of you, if you're programmers, might already have it, right? If you don't have Git, who does not have GitHub or never heard of GitHub? If you haven't heard of it or you don't have it, it's okay. You're going to sign up today, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about version control and how you're going to keep track of, each version of your code. All right. And by the end, again, we're going to do a final exam where you're going to use a little bit of Ajax and some kind of Create.js. If you know Create.js by the end, then your final exam will be no problem. Okay. Let's continue. So this is kind of the schedule of events that are happening. So again, we're talking intro to JavaScript today, very high level, accessing the DOM and the BOM by next week, what that is, right? What's the BOM, what's the DOM, what's the difference? You're going to get assignment 1. It's due 2 weeks later, so that's February 1st. It's like around the corner, right? February is like, it feels like a long way away. We're in January, but it's 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away. And then we're going to get into debugging and error handling, interacting with user through events and what events are. To be honest with you, when I look at this, I always look at events as more of an intermediate to advanced topic to understand what events are. And that's what happens with JavaScript. JavaScript is probably one of the hardest languages to learn because for many people, it seems to be very unstructured. And especially if you're a programmer that likes structure, then JavaScript can be super challenging to learn. And I'm going to try and break that down for you as we go towards the midterm. We have our midterm on February 22nd. That'll be on during class time. I'm going to probably set it up for about an hour and a half. It won't last. I'm not going to gear it up for 3 hours of midterm. Some of you may stay for the whole 3 hours because you may not be, great. It's going to be open book. All my midterms and any kind of quizzes or tests that I kind of ask you to do, unless I specifically say so, they're probably going to be open book. It's not going to save you though, right? Open book usually means you need to know what you're doing because I've kind of kept it in mind that it's open book. It means you can search the internet for answers. You can look at Google, you can look at my code, your code, to try and get ideas of how to do stuff. And it's going to be a variation of something that we've done in assignment 1 or assignment 2. Okay. As we get into the second half, as you can see, we're communicating with Ajax. Then we're going to get into some libraries. JavaScript is good on its own, but jQuery makes it a little easier, right? So we're going to talk jQuery probably in around the second week of March, right? So jQuery 1, jQuery 2, going to handle jQuery for a couple of weeks. And then right into object-oriented JavaScript at the end of March. Object-oriented JavaScript and TypeScript, these 3 weeks, probably the hardest weeks you'll do, but you need to get them done so that you understand how to do your final assignment, right? Which is a banner ad that we're going to be talking about, how to do a banner ad. Now, does a banner ad make sense in this day and age? There are white papers out there that tell you that, there's still a really great call for doing advertising with web, right? So that's why we're going to do it. And why JavaScript? Because it's interactive, right? And it's cross-platform. It works across every browser, right? If I was using something like Flash, God forbid, Flash would be only limited to some browsers nowadays, and most browsers, especially mobile, will not support Flash, right? Not very well. And hopefully, and pretty soon that the standard will be put to bed. Well, let's see what happens with that. Final exam, again, is going to be around more advanced topics of object-oriented JavaScript with some jQuery and Ajax. So it sounds really complex. Don't worry, we're going to step through it. Each week, we're going to talk about these different topics. And I'm going to pull from the book. I'm also going to supply you with PowerPoint presentations that are going to be up online, whether it's before class or just after class. I'm going to put it up online for you, right? So you'll have everything you need, plus the videos to support everything we talked about. Okay? So that's really our schedule in a nutshell. Any questions? I know it's some people may not know what to ask. Sometimes you look at it and go, "Wow, what's the DOM? What's the BOM? Why are they called those things? Why do people make these acronyms? Sometimes they're kind of scary, right? They're like, what is that? It kind of sounds really advanced. It's not advanced. It's just instead of saying document object model, they just go DOM, right? So that's what it's all about. They try and make these shortcuts, for JavaScript and for other languages to kind of make it easier, not harder. Although, it's jargon, so of course people run away when they don't understand a term. Okay, so that's about me and about the course. A little bit about you. Is anybody, I know some people have had some experience with JavaScript. Is there anyone else that in the course that has some experience with JavaScript at all? It's okay to put your hand up, eh? Yeah, you have some experience with JavaScript? A little bit, right? No? No? Anyone else? So have you done any kind of other languages other than HTML5 and CSS3? Anyone else have any other programming language experience? Yes. C#. Java. Actually, they're kind of the same, right? Java and C#. C# is Microsoft's answer to Java, right? I would say Java is the king of all languages. It makes the most money if you're going to learn how to program. C# would be a close second in terms of the functionality. They're both generic languages that you can build almost anything with. And JavaScript is not related to Java. JavaScript and Java, totally different languages. And we'll talk about where JavaScript came from a little bit. Okay, so that's this. Let's take a look at some initial things. Again, I'm going to put some of this up later on. If it looks like there's a lot of parts, it's only because I've broken it out a little bit so that it's not so much to look at all at once. And it usually goes in the pace of how I'm teaching. I'm going to probably take a break every hour for about 5 or 10 minutes, okay? Because it's too much for me just to keep going. And if I have time today, I'd like to try and end it a little early, only because it's just an intro for today, right? So I'm not expecting you to do anything. I do expect for some sign up to be done. And my recommendation while we're waiting is sign up for GitHub. If you've never done GitHub before, actually I should probably put it up through my browser here. So if I go to new incognito window, if you go to github.com, my expectation is if you haven't signed up, sign up, right? GitHub is a cloud service that allows us to share our code. So all of my code is going to be shared through GitHub, right? All my code examples are going to be online, right? And that's for the entire course. So if you want to find me on GitHub, you can always go to github.com, and I made it easy. I kind of stole in the Georgian College organization. So if you look at Georgian College, all my code archives are there, even from past sessions. The ones I'm going to be creating for this session, for this semester, is going to be COMP1073-W2017. Anything that has that in front of it, it's relevant to this course for this semester, okay? So please take a look at Georgian College. That's where all my code archives are going to be. And usually within in an open book test, you'll have access to all this stuff. So it's not like you won't be able to see it or look at code or whatever. Because in the real world, we look at Google for almost anything, right? So it doesn't make sense for me to limit you, right, necessarily. And besides, I'm going to, like I said, gear up so that when I make an exam, I take that into account. In my head, you have access. That means you can do these things. So some assumptions will be made. Okay, so sign up if you haven't signed up. The other thing I'm going to be using in this course before I start is different editors. There's some editors that I recommend. I'm not going to be using Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a pig of an editor, right? It's massive. It's 70 million lines of code. If you're someone who loves Microsoft and Visual Studio, all the power. I'm not going to stop you from using Visual Studio, but I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. Right, that's the editor that I choose. However, you can choose whichever editor you feel comfortable using. I don't recommend things like Notepad++. I think that's probably really too low level for you at this point. But Visual Studio Code is cross-platform. It works on both Mac and Windows. For most of us, those are the machines that we have. It has great code hinting for JavaScript, and it's free. Okay, so I think this is a great little editor for you to use. Okay, so Visual Studio Code. The other one that I can also recommend, if you don't like Visual Studio Code or you want to try something a little bit more challenging, there's also Atom, right? Atom is actually a very cool text editor as well, right? They're both very similar in functionality, right? It's really about what your preference is. Some people like Sublime Text as well. That's a pretty good editor. I can mention that as well, Sublime. And there are many others. WebStorm is a great editor as well, but it's proprietary. It's made from the same people that make Android Studio, IntelliJ, right, and JetBrains. So I recommend that you pick an editor that you like. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code because, and from here, if you ever do any kind of server-side scripting with Rich, as an example, he's probably going to use Visual Studio Code or something like WebStorm or something else like that. So anything I've mentioned, we keep using over and over again throughout your time here in the web program. Okay, so Visual Studio Code is definitely something I'm going to be using. I'm also going to be doing a lot of command line, right? Because when we do web stuff with JavaScript specifically, I'm going to be using command line, which means I'm going to be using the terminal, right, on the Mac, right? So here's my terminal on the Mac. And if you're not familiar with this, and if you've never used, if you never accessed the terminal on a Mac, you can get that by command space. If you press command space and type in kind of terminal, right? You can look at terminal. You can also look, I'm using something called iTerm if you really want to match what I'm doing. So there's iTerm, and that'll pull up your terminal. If you're a Windows user, you're going to use command prompt, right? Now, I'll be honest with you. There is a great advantage to having something like a terminal, which is more like a PowerShell for Windows users than regular command prompt. Because command prompt, there's a lot of configuration details you have to do in order for you to have access to things like GitHub, right? If you're someone who doesn't like command line and you're never going to use command line, you don't ever want to touch command line, you don't have to. There is an app that you can download from GitHub, and I'm going to show you what that is. I have to go into my incognito window to get that, though, right? So if I go to desktop.github.com, it'll give me the ability for me to download the desktop app that's associated with GitHub. So you can do all your Git stuff through the desktop app. I mean, you never have to touch terminal with this one, okay? So this is one of the requirements. Yes?
Why did you have to go to incognito?
Because I'm already signed up for GitHub, and it would recognize who I am, okay, right? Notice that I'm also using Chrome, right, as a browser. You can use whichever browser you feel comfortable, but I recommend Chrome or Firefox. I don't recommend Internet Explorer for sure, right? Not because I don't think, I'm not a Microsoft hater at all, but I don't recommend that or Edge, because you won't get the same kind of experience that you're going to get when building stuff with JavaScript unless you use something like Chrome or Firefox. I use incognito mode or private mode, privacy mode, a lot when it comes to certain things, only so that way I know what the experience is going to look like for the average user who hasn't signed up or doesn't have any caching. So sometimes I want to use incognito mode for that. It kind of gives me the raw experience. Okay, so that's really the tools so far that I'm using. There's a lot of other tools in this course, and I have to be honest, the course is a little tools heavy, but the great thing is, if you learn the tools now, then when you go into the other courses for server-side scripting, as an example, right, which is going to happen, I believe, next semester, right, for you guys, then you'll have a lot of the tools already. You won't have to get them. Okay. Other things I recommend that you do for your machine, and we'll talk about this, is install Node.js, right? This is not a Node.js class. So JavaScript can live both on the front end and on the back end, on the server itself. This never used to be the case. This has only happened within the last few years. We're one of the only colleges that teaches Node.js in one of our advanced courses, in our server-side scripting course, right? So, you're lucky that we're kind of looking at this new technology, this emerging technology, and teaching it to you, so you can do JavaScript on both the front end and the back end. And that's why JavaScript is so important to learn, because once you learn JavaScript, you can use it almost anywhere, right? And it's a little bit more advanced than just using PHP, and I'll talk about why. PHP is great for beginners, but then you have to know HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, PHP. It makes it just that much more difficult to handle the entire web experience, right? Whereas all you learn is JavaScript, that you can do it on every piece, even on the database. The database, there's a database called MongoDB, and we talk about that in server-side scripting. So I may ask you to download and install Node.js. If you're a Mac user, I don't recommend you download and install it from here. You're going to say, why, Tom? I'm just downloading, Node.js. Because it'll ask you for super user access. It'll ask you to do a sudo access or sudo, right? When you do any kind of command in Node. And there is a link that I recommend. So install Node, this is what I would do. So again, when we're in the class together, I want to build up your Google foo so it's really strong. So when we actually do searches on Google, you know where to look and how to search on Google. It's kind of an art, right? So install Node.js, with Homebrew for Mac, right, is what I want you to search. And if you search that, if you go down, you can see that you can install Node.js and NPM using Homebrew on OS 10 and Mac OS. And there's a reason for that, because it makes it easier later on for Mac users, and so they get a better experience. If you download and install from Node.js, it's not going to kill you, however. It's just going to make it a little more difficult. You may have to put a sudo command in front of everything else that I normally do with that one. Okay? That's all it is. So please, I recommend you download and install Node.js on your machine as a dependency, and you run it using Homebrew. And that means you have to download and install Homebrew, and there's instructions on these pages, if you search for it, on how to do that. Later on today, if we get access to our Slack channel, I'll populate all those links on the Slack channel so you have access to all of them, so you can go in there and do what I've asked you to do. Don't worry, remember that I'm recording this whole thing, so if you've missed something, you can always go back and go, what did you say to install? Oh, you told me to do this. Yeah.
When are we going to be using Node.js?
It's a good question. We're not going to build a Node.js site. That's not going to happen. That's too advanced, right? But I will be using it as a small server to simulate what it looks like when you're actually live, right? So instead of downloading and installing something like WAMP or XAMPP or MAMP if you're a Mac person, or LAMP if you're a Linux person, right? That's a little bit too heavy. It's just a small little server that'll run inside your folder that'll kind of act like it's a server. That's all it's going to be for, primarily. Okay, and we'll talk about other little tools that I'm going to be using. So it's not for, I'm not asking you to make Node.js apps. Not going to happen. Eventually you will, and if you install it now, you'll get used to the tool sets. That's what I want you to do. So there's going to be a bit of a learning curve when it comes to tools. I'll be honest with you guys and girls, web is the most difficult platform to learn on because of all the tool sets, different technologies, the rate of change that happens pretty much every month now, right? There's something that's changing, right? It's difficult. And the reason why is because there's no book that I can offer you to say, yeah, take this book and it's going to tell you everything you need to know to be a great web developer. It's not going to happen, right? I would be lying to you if I said that to you. There's some good books out there, but they keep coming up with new versions and new revisions every year, and usually twice a year. Any questions so far about tools and about the stuff I've asked you to download and install? Please, for sure, yes.
For Node.js here, it says you download by 6.9 is recommended.
I recommend this one, the current version. Yeah. It's okay to do this, but nothing's wrong with downloading this one, right? It's both going to work fine. Might as well just download the biggest version you can. And as an example, if I was to check to see what my version of Node.js is, if here I'm on the command line, I would just type in node -v for Mac. And this is the advantage of having a Mac, because right away your terminal gives you better, a little bit of responsiveness. I can see that my version is 7.1.0, and I installed this 2 weeks ago, right? And you can see that it's already at 7.4, right? So it's moving at an alarming rate, the way we're changing things, the way things are improving on the web. So we're going to talk about these things over and over again. The other thing is, for Mac users, again, if you're a Mac user, you have great advantage when it comes to this stuff, because if I type in git -- version, right, most likely you have a version of Git installed in your machine. Try this out if you're a Mac user, right? If, however, you are a Windows user, this probably won't work at all for you, right? And not because Windows machines are hamstrung or anything like that. You can make it all work. And if you want to install Git on the command line for Windows, there are some great instructions you can follow, and I'll come around and help you out as well, because it's required for this course. Git, GitHub, and all the stuff I've talked about, we need you to do it. And for assignments, each of your assignments that you're going to be doing, I need 2 things when you submit your assignments. One is a link to your GitHub account, okay? And the other one is a zip archive, not a raw archive. So a zip archive, you can download 7-zip for free if you're a Windows user. And there's also a zip archiver that you can download for Mac, a zip archive of your project files. Okay, those are the 2 things I want you to submit on Blackboard when I put up the assignments. Okay, so it's not just one thing. I just don't want you to give me your project files. There is no paper in this course for me. Okay, this is a pure digital course, so I'm not going to hand you exams or paperwork for your assignments. Everything is going to be within Blackboard. Okay, I will be making announcements in both Blackboard and Slack, however, and hopefully we'll be able to get that all set up today or next week. All right, so when it comes down to it, so here I got installed, how to install Node.js. Here's my Node.js, my GitHub, how to do all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm going to come around. One of the exercises that I want to do today is come around and make sure that everyone's set up with GitHub, they've signed up, and everything else. Okay. So Git and GitHub. But if you wanted to install GitHub, I was going to say on your Windows machine, then if I kind of just look at Git, search for Git, and if I kind of scroll down, there's a difference between Git and GitHub, right? Git is a version control system, and you can actually download Git on its own for your Windows machine, right? Separately from GitHub, right? Or the app for GitHub. Okay, and what it is, and we're going to talk more about what this is, we use Git and GitHub for 3 reasons. And if I ever give you a little test, hint, little quiz, like next week, right? I might ask you what the 3 reasons are for using Git and GitHub, right? One of the reasons is backup, right? GitHub is a cloud service. I'm going to put my files up on GitHub. I'm going to share them with you, right? And if my computer burns, hopefully not, right? Because it's really expensive, right? But if my computer burns, then I'm going to have my files on GitHub, right? That's backup is the first reason. Second reason, right, is collaboration. You know, there's a great opportunity. If you're going to, go for a job as a web developer or even a developer, one of the first things they look at is your resume. Then they look at, do you have some kind of mini portfolio site or a portfolio site of your work? Let me show me some of your work. Third thing I'm going to ask for is, are you on GitHub? Are you on LinkedIn? Those are the things you need to know in order for you to be, kind of a good candidate for work. And I'll tell you right now, I've gotten, kind of job offers through GitHub, because people say, like, I see you've done all these work. We have a position at TD Bank, and your skills might be cool. Phone us, and maybe we can set up an interview. And I've done, different interviews just by people calling me from GitHub, right? Because you put up your code on GitHub, people find you on GitHub. So GitHub is a place that we can collaborate. That's the second reason. And the third reason is this. I don't know anybody who hasn't said the following. It just worked, and now it's not working anymore, right? Yeah, it was just working. No, it just worked. But now I did something, I don't know what I did, and it's not working anymore, right? GitHub allows us to do version control, and we can actually keep track of each individual snapshot of your project as it progresses, as you move through the development process, right? So version control is huge. It's the main reason, or revision control is the main reason why we use GitHub, right? When you submit your assignments to me, right? 2 marks are going to be just for you to put it up on GitHub. That's like a backup, right? The other 2 marks are going to be there for you to show me that you're using GitHub all the time as you're developing, right? And I'm going to show you the methods that I use and how to do that. I do a series of commits, that's what they're called, which are snapshots of your code, every major feature that I add. So example would be if I've created my index.html page, commit, snapshot, right? If I add another page, commit, snapshot, right? And I keep doing these commits over and over again, so I have a record of all the stuff I've done. So that's going to give you the other 2 marks. And so if you don't do it, you're going to lose 2 marks every single time you do an assignment. That's a lot of marks for nothing, right? So I need you to kind of work with me on GitHub. If you have questions, if something doesn't work, please feel free to ask me. Don't wait until the assignment is due and say, Tom, I don't understand, but I can't put it up on GitHub. That's bad. That's like you doing it at the last minute. That's like you doing your user interface design after the fact. You've done your beautiful website, and then you're like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do wireframes. Hold on. That's like kind of backwards, right? You always want to start with your tool sets first, right? To help you build everything, right? It's like documenting. Some people hate documentation, internal and external. They hate it, right? They're like, I never do internal documentation. I just hate it. It's the worst thing ever. But if you learn how to do that, if you build up a good habit of doing your internal documentation, it becomes easier to do. Okay, and by the way, hint, hint, internal documentation, that's required on your assignments as well. What is internal documentation? Commenting. You have to comment your code. Who are you? What's your student number? What's the code you're working on? That kind of stuff. All right, so that's kind of internal documentation. So Git, Node.js, right? GitHub. I want you to sign up for those things. And of course, Slack as we move forward. Any other examples of code editors people are going to use other than Visual Studio Code? That's okay. You don't have to use Visual Studio Code. Just because I'm using it, it doesn't mean that you have to. I think it just might make it easier for us if we all share the same thing, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to. If you really like to use Visual Studio, go ahead. right? If you're a Mac person and want to do things with Xcode, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but go ahead if it works for you. For me, I'm not gonna meter you or test you on which code editor you're using. Never. I won't do that. And I won't test you on how you put stuff up on GitHub, right? Things that, and we got to talk about this because it's the beginning of the course, from a norms perspective, right? Whenever I teach anything here, I start pretty promptly. Exams, if you're 50 minutes into the exam, I'm not going to let you come in. So if you're late for your exam, midterm and final, unless there's some kind of catastrophe outside, like some kind of weather catastrophe or something else that's going on, right? Or you're sick, you got some kind of note or whatever, I'm going to start promptly. 15 minutes in, I'm going to shut the doors. You're not going to be allowed in. All right, just letting you know, right? That's number one. And two, cheating, don't do it. All right, it's a bad thing. Here, everything we do is individual. That means all your work is your own, right? Now, if I've pointed you to a piece of code and I said, here, take a look at this code as an example. Look at it as an example. If I've told you it's okay to use it, it's okay to use it. But don't look at each other's work, right? That would be the worst thing you can do. And we had a lot of examples of academic dishonesty last semester, like lots and lots of people who kind of copied off each other. And I'll be honest with you, my Google foo is strong, man. I can find anybody who cheats very easily. And a lot of times it's because I look at it and I go, I never taught that, right? It's really cool, but I never taught it, right? How did that person do this? Well, take a look. That's pretty good, actually, you know? Or when I see a real big difference, they're really good in the assignments and they really suck at the exams, right? And it's a huge difference. I'm talking about like, you know, they don't know what they're doing on the exams, but their assignments are perfect, right? That's an issue. And a lot of times, because remember, you're going to have open book on your exam too. So anything you did on your assignment, you should be able to do on your exam. I can detect these little inconsistencies because I've been doing this for a long time and I do it all the time, right? So please, it's not going to help anybody. I got to talk about this ugly stuff just the first time. It's not going to help anyone to do that. If you have a question about it, if you're not sure if you're cheating or not, or if you're borrowing somebody else's code, ask me. I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to say either yes, you can, or no, you can't. That's the safest thing to do, right, when you're doing an assignment. For all the assignments that I've given you, though, there should be no call to use somebody else's code for the most part. It should be all your own. Unless, like I said, going back, I've given you a template. I said, okay, use this template, and then from there, do blah, blah, blah. So the template's okay, but everything else you put in there is your own, right? Okay, so any questions around tools, you know, the norms, things like coming into class? What if you can't make it to class? You know, I know that I record my lectures. You know, do you have to let me know I'm not coming to class? I'm not going to take attendance. If you don't want to come, it's up to you, right? You're paying me to be here, right? So if you don't attend class, it's up to you. This is you're all adults, right? So I'm here as a service. I'm going to do your service. I'm going to try and show you as much as I can. I'm not going to meter if you're not going to be here. I'm not going to meter. I'm not going to stop you from coming in during a regular day if you're late. I'll let you come in, right? No problem. Only on exams. There's only 2 times I'm asking you just to be on time, please. Week 7 and week 14. Those are the 2 times I don't have a lot of tolerance because of I got to explain things to you guys. We're 20% of your final grade. Your actions could affect negatively somebody else. I can't have that, right? So that's why I make it a little bit strict. Also, from a lateness perspective, right? I usually make your assignments due the day before class, right? So that means if we're meeting on Wednesdays, chances are your assignments will be due Tuesdays, right? And that way you don't have to miss class, right? Because if it's due on a Wednesday or if it's due on the Friday and we're sitting on the Wednesday, you're not going to come to class because you're going to do your assignment, right? So it'll probably be due on the Tuesdays, chances are, right? That's typically what I do. So Tuesdays they'll be due. You come in and they're all done on Wednesday, and then hopefully I can get all your marking done by Friday. That's what I'd like to try and do this semester. And it's been very challenging over the last little while because I'm a very busy guy. So that's the kind of the way I want to kind of set everything up this semester. If we do it, if we all work together on this, please don't ask me for extensions. You've got 2 weeks for some things that you can probably do within a couple hours, right? Like I'm trying to space it out for you so you have time to do your work. But this is what happens with students. And this is, again, just to try and be successful. The one thing that happens with students all the time is you give them 2 weeks and they wait till the last day because they're going to put that off. It's not due right now, right? So they put it off to the last minute. And then I'm going to get a bunch of calls and messages from Slack saying, Tom, I don't know why, but my stuff doesn't build anymore. And it just built just before. And it's just, I'll be honest with you, it's all BS, right? Like we all do it. If I was a student, I'd probably wait till the last moment too. Don't do it. Start. When I give you an assignment, if I give you an assignment next week, start. I'm going to try and give you some assignment time in class to do your assignments. So you're not going to just do it at home, right? To kind of alleviate some of that pressure. So at least you started your assignment, right? I'm going to try and do as much as I can. I can't do like 2 hours of time in class to do your assignment. But when I give it to you, and I'm going to give you all your assignments, like I said, front load all your assignments and their due dates. I'm just going to be reminding you when they're all due. Okay, so please don't do it at the last minute. Your assignments are worth 60% of your mark. The way people don't do well in this course is they don't hand their assignments in. Okay, if you hand it in late, it's 20% per day, right? That means that if you handed it in on the Wednesday, it's 20%. That means now it's out of 80. And if you handed it on Thursday, it's 20% less. That means now it's out of 60. And it's going to keep going down until it's not worth anything anymore, right? So please don't do that. Okay, that would be very bad, right? Get it done on time. Look, in other institutions, I'll tell you right now, there's zero tolerance for lateness. If you're 1 day late, it's 0, right? We don't do that here, right? We give you a little bit of leeway, things happen, right? And, you know, and all that, but you've got 2 weeks. It's not something that you haven't been told about within, like, I'm not telling you today for tomorrow and get it done. You schedule yourself accordingly. And one of the wisdoms that I've always taken on that someone told me way long ago, which I'm going to relate to you today, is if it doesn't get scheduled, it won't get done. Schedule it. If I've given you an assignment that's due on a certain day, put it in your schedule, right? Don't let Blackboard remind you. Put it in and say, look, I got to get my assignment done. Here's when I'm going to work on my assignment, right? Because it's all individual work. Any questions around this stuff? Okay, let's take a short break. I've kind of talked for about, 50 minutes, I would say. Let's take a 10-minute break. Get your coffees, get some fresh air. We'll open up the door, hopefully. So we're not, I'm boiling in here. I don't know about you guys, right? And then when we come back, we're going to get into the meat and bones of JavaScript a little bit. And, we'll start talking about progressive enhancement.